Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with tragic news. Grand Chief Cathy Merrick, the first female Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, has died. Merrick collapsed outside of the Winnipeg Law Courts this afternoon while speaking to reporters. Bystanders immediately began CPR and she was rushed to hospital. She was a prominent voice on many First Nations issues. CBC's Mike Arsenault has more on her legacy and life.
And I'm so honored today to be the first woman to lead the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs.
Cathy Merrick made history in 2022 when she became the first female Grand Chief elected to the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs in its nearly 35-year history. And in 2024, she was re-elected in a landslide win. Grand Chief Cathy Merrick died suddenly after collapsing outside of the Law Courts building Friday afternoon. She was the former band councillor of Pemmichikamak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba and was elected as their chief in 2013. In 2015, she stood beside then Premier Greg Selinger as he delivered an apology to the people of Pemmichikamak for the harm caused by Manitoba Hydro's Genpeg hydroelectric dam. She was devoted to advocating for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and spoke out about the suicide crisis in her own First Nation. Recently, she stood by the families of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron demanding a search of the Winnipeg area landfill for the women's remains. Merrick was a wife, mother, and grandmother who will be remembered for her fierce advocacy of First Nations people in Manitoba. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Winnipeg.
In the few hours since Merrick's passing, there's been an outpouring of grief and condolences from people in the Indigenous community, as well as political leaders she worked alongside with. Flags at the Manitoba Legislature have been lowered to half-mast in recognition of Merrick. She worked closely with Premier Wab Kinew on a number of issues over the years. In a statement, the Premier said, "I will miss her wise counsel, her drive to get things done, and most of all, her hugs. No matter how challenging or how difficult any political conversation was, Cathy Merrick always greeted you and said farewell by hugging you." Today, Mayor Scott Gillingham called her a friend and says he valued her wisdom and insight.
He was a remarkable leader whose dedication to justice, to families, to First Nations community members, and to making sure that the people that she represented would have a better life and a stronger future.
Shortly before the Grand Chief collapsed, she'd been speaking to reporters. Merrick was reacting to an acquittal in a high-profile court case, calling it a miscarriage of justice. A provincial corrections officer was found not guilty in the death of an Indigenous inmate. Robert Jeffrey Morden was cleared of charges of criminal negligence and failing to provide the necessaries of life. CBC's Cameron McLean reports.
This video shows what happened in the moments before William Walter Amo went into cardiac arrest. An emergency response team struggling to restrain Amo after a prolonged standoff.
Please, I can't breathe. Stop!
Amo can be heard repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe," more than 20 times. The 45-year-old man was taken to hospital but died days later. The captain of the team that took Amo down, Robert Morden, was charged in his death. A year after the end of Morden's trial, Judge Tony Saletti gave his decision. In my view, the fact that Mr. Amo said that he could not breathe on numerous occasions and that seemingly there was no medical assistance offered to him, standing alone, is not determinative of this case. The evidence before me does not satisfy me of Mr. Morden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt on either of the two charges before me. Saletti told the court that given Amo's combative behavior, it would not have been possible to do a proper medical assessment. The judge ruled that Morden could not reasonably have been expected to know how serious Amo's condition was. Morden broke into sobs after the judge read his decision. Outside the courthouse, supporters of Amo called the decision unfair. Louise Mino says Amo was like a brother to her.
Our justice system needs to do better when it comes to situations like this. Yes, he was erratic. Yes, he was very agitated.
A lawyer for the family says they have already filed a lawsuit against Morden and the provincial government over Amo's death.
There are a number of steps that should have been taken, in our view, that weren't taken, and that those things taken together show that the guards were maybe not criminally negligent, but civilly negligent.
A mandatory inquest into Amo's death will also be held. A date for the inquest has not yet been set. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
As you heard earlier, Grand Chief Merrick was tireless in her advocacy for Indigenous people. Today, she was in court as that decision was read. Her family and the chief of her home community, Pimicikamak, tell CBC News they want some of her final words of advocacy shared and heard.
And so today, being in a courtroom is only a disappointment. It is a gross miscarriage of justice that contravenes the basic principles of our basic human rights. Safety, justice, and equity for First Nation people under the law.
A Winnipeg organization that supports residential school survivors is facing a $2 million shortfall and has laid off most of its staff. Last-minute financial support to the Wasay Healing Centre has saved its Orange Shirt Day events. But as Arturo Chang reports, the organization's future is uncertain.
This was just 1 year ago. Thousands of people marching with residential school survivors in an emotional healing walk during Orange Shirt Day. It almost didn't happen this year.
Without the resources, without the capacity or the funding, we had to make a decision to cancel it, look at canceling it.
Wayne Mason Jr. says the center is 2 years behind on its financial disclosures to the federal government, its main backer. Their funding, over $2 million last year, didn't get renewed. The province and Indigenous organizations have all stepped in so the Orange Shirt Day walk goes ahead. But Mason says Wasay's future is still up in the air.
The reality that our doors were going to be shut didn't hit us for a couple days. Then we had to make decisions of ending programs and services and letting staff go.
Wasay is only just one of many programs that desperately needs to be continued.
Belinda Vandenbroek has been supporting survivors for decades. She herself attended the McKay Residential School for 10 years. Vandenbroek says everyone deals with the trauma differently, but all need the help places like Wasay provide.
I've been on my healing journey for 47 years, and people ask me, well, 47 years is a long time. Well, yeah, life happens every day. All kinds of things happen in a day that can hurt you physically, emotionally, spiritually.
CBC News has reached out to Indigenous Services Canada, which oversees Wasay's funding, but they didn't answer our questions. Wasay says it plans to get its financial statements in order by the fall and reapply for funding. But in the meantime, all its programming has been shut down. Arturo Chang, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Main Street Project added a new van to its fleet with funds raised by the Transit Employee Community Fund. The new van will support Main Street Project's Indigenous Relations team by driving people in need to ceremonies and cultural events held outside the city. The employee-driven fund is made up of donors and payroll contributions. It's run by a committee that chooses projects benefiting the community. In 2017, Main Street provided de-escalation training to transit drivers. Transit recognized the work the nonprofit does in the community and wanted to give back.
That other vans are more about street outreach, and so we don't have a lot of space for transporting people, so having a transport van to fill up and take people is such a great opportunity.
Main Street Project says it's already allocated funds to cover maintenance and operating costs for the van moving forward. International students are frustrated about cutbacks to the number of hours they can work. It's the first time in years many full-time students will experience the cuts to half their hours. CBC's Santiago Arias has more.
It's scary, mostly.
Krupa Maheshwari is starting her last university year worried about how she's going to make ends meet. Last school year, she worked 30 hours between classes to cover expenses. But recent federal rules mean her hours are capped at 20, slashing her income by a third.
I had to move from my old apartment to a further one from both work and uni just because it's more cheaper, and so I can afford it better.
Pre-pandemic, there were caps on working hours for international students. In recent years, those were waived to help with labor shortages, allowing international students to work up to 40 hours a week. But this September marks the first time many full-time international students will face the cap again. The federal government says they want students to focus on learning.
We need to support international students and make sure they're set up for success and that they're here properly studying.
Experts say downturns in the economy put pressure on the government to make the changes.
The intention is to reduce some of the pressure on lower wage workers already in Canada, many of whom are migrants, whose unemployment rate is quite high at the moment.
But the cap is changing yet again later this fall. The federal government is increasing the hours to 24 per week, so students can work 3 full shifts. Still, the University of Winnipeg Student Association's president says the reduction is significant and that the financial hit from the changes can also impact their academic performance.
If you can't afford your rent and your food on the table, then you would definitely be more stressed and more anxious, and those mental health issues will spiral out. And so how does that help you with academics?
Back at the University of Manitoba, Masher was hoping her grades would be her only concern while studying abroad. But now it's taking a back seat.
Because of the limit, it's like I have to put work first and then focus on school later, because I know that school is going to be there. It has the set schedule, but for work I need to fix it in somehow so that I'm working all the 24, making the most of it.
Meanwhile, universities say they are already seeing a drop in international students due to all of Ottawa's changes. Santiago Arias, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Conservatives have a strategy to take Elmwood-Transcona away from the NDP in the upcoming by-election. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, that strategy involves tying the New Democrats to the fortunes of another party.
Advanced polls are open in Elmwood-Transcona. A Winnipeg riding left vacant in March when 8-year MP Daniel Blakey resigned. This is an NDP stronghold. The New Democrats have won this riding 10 times over the past 36 years. The Conservatives have only won this riding once, in 2011. Their strategy to win it back is to connect the New Democrats to the unpopular governing Liberals. Conservative candidate Colin Reynolds has campaign signs showing NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in a handshake with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It's an effort to draw attention to the 2-year governance deal that sustained the Liberal minority. That deal ended Wednesday when Singh pulled the plug. But the Conservatives are sticking with the strategy.
It's kind of a particular strategy at this moment in time.
U of M political scientist Royce Coop says it's unusual to see one party compete against another by tying them to a third.
Liberals are very unpopular. They're certainly not competitive in that seat. And so to the extent that they can tie them to the Liberals, it makes some sense. But you don't see that all the time.
One day after Singh ended his deal with Trudeau, Conservative candidate Reynolds challenged his NDP opponent, Leela Dance, to commit to a non-confidence vote against the Liberals. Dance says she won't predetermine her vote on any issue and chastised Reynolds for avoiding interviews in candidates' debates.
I think it's a little sad that someone from outside of our community has brought in that type of very negative politics.
The Liberals, Greens, People's Party, and Canadian Future also have candidates in this race. Advanced polls are open until Monday. Election Day is September 16th. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The projected cost of a new Winnipeg transit garage has risen so much the city might scale back the project. Transit says its new garage planned for Oak Point Highway will cost $305 million. That's $105 million above the existing budget. The new garage is supposed to replace a building on Main Street. It's falling apart and doesn't have enough space for buses or maintenance bays. Transit says if the city can't find the money, the new garage will have to be smaller, with less space to store buses and fewer maintenance bays. That means Transit won't be able to buy as many buses as it needs to meet the needs of riders. A new sexual education graphic novel coming out at Brandon University aims to start a conversation among students about sexual violence. It's called It Happened to Me and It's Not Okay, sharing stories of sexual violence. In the book, Brandon University professor Candace Waddle-Henowich shares the stories of 10 survivors. It also includes information about local resources. She wants the novel to be a resource used across Canadian university campuses.
Participants were very open and very sharing. Their violence also occurred between 1990 and 2010. So it was a retrospective reflection of what they went through during the time when they were violated. So they were able to provide a lot of really good advice as to how someone who's experiencing this can cope through it and how someone can get the support they need as well.
It Happened to Me is being released during what's known as the Red Zone, the first 6 to 8 weeks of the school year where students are most likely to experience sexual assault. Jessica Laxdal is the university's Sexual Violence Education and Prevention Coordinator. She says the Red Zone accounts for about 50% of reported sexual assaults on campus. Laxdal says the university is focused on education to help prevent sexual violence.
I think one of the things that we want to do on campus is really talk about it. And I think from there people can feel safe. And when they feel safe, then they can share their stories and seek that support that they need.
It Happened to Me officially launches Tuesday. Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans are gearing up to make some noise at the Banjo Bowl Saturday afternoon. The Blue Bombers edged the Saskatchewan Roughriders in Sunday's Labor Day Classic in a 35-33 victory. Quarterback Zach Collaros left the game during the second quarter after receiving a helmet-to-helmet hit from Miles Brown. Brown was later fined for the hit, but the two-time CFL Most Outstanding Player did not return to the field that day in Regina. Collaros did participate in practice Wednesday and was declared available for the rematch against the Roughriders here in Winnipeg. The Bombers have beaten the Riders in the last 4 Banjo Bowls. The game sold out back in July. Riley Lachuk in now, and too late if you want to get tickets to the Banjo Bowl, but if you want to head down there for some of the activities and the party, what's it going to look like?
Well, we're looking at, I'm going to describe it as a pleasant afternoon.
Pleasant's
Tomorrow,
good.
No precipitation, not overly hot or humid, nothing like that. Just a lot of cheering.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's perfect football day.
Yeah. Here's a look at your Banjo Bowl forecast, and we're looking at about 22 degrees once that game gets underway at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Mainly sunny skies. The only thing that might get in your way is that southwest wind. 15 gusting to 30. So not overly windy either, but it will be a little bit breezy through the afternoon tomorrow. So we are looking at a high of 23 in the afternoon. So by the time the game ends, likely more around 20 degrees or so. Satellite and radar, not a lot to see today. Mainly sunny sky here in the south. A bit of high passing cloud here in southern Manitoba. A little bit more cloud and even a few showers into the far northern part of the province, particularly along the Hudson Bay coast today, seeing a few showers. Expect that to continue as we get throughout the evening hours tonight and really tapering off by the time we get into the day on Saturday. So here is what's ahead for your weekend. High pressure sets in. That means sunny weather, dry conditions, and temperatures that will warm up as we get through the weekend. You can see as we get to Saturday afternoon game time, sunny skies, southwest winds, as I mentioned, a little bit of passing cloud, but that's about all that will get in your way throughout the day on Saturday. Into Sunday, much the same as well. Not a lot to talk about in terms of our weather here in Manitoba over the next couple of days. Although we do have a heat wave, a prolonged period of some very hot temperatures that will set in over the next few days and into next week. Here's a taste of some of that weather. Kelowna getting to 33 this afternoon, 32s for Calgary and Edmonton. Compare that to our temperatures here in Manitoba today. Just 18 in Dauphin, 19 is the best we did in Winnipeg today. And those temperatures are all because of this ridge of high pressure here that is starting to build in the west. As we get into the weekend and certainly into early next week, you can see that ridge starts to shift a little bit further to the east, allowing some of that warm and humid Pacific air to funnel into southern Manitoba and southern Saskatchewan. So we're looking at a prolonged period of heat continuing even into Tuesday. Here you can see that ridge of high pressure really not starting to break down until we get later into the week next week. So we're looking at some very warm conditions, temperatures in the long range at or near that 30-degree mark into next week. Tonight, though, 7 degrees, mostly clear skies tonight. Another single-digit low as we get into the evening tonight. A mostly sunny morning tomorrow, 10 degrees first thing, and up to 23 in the afternoon. We're looking at a mainly sunny sky tomorrow. Southwest breeze tomorrow into Sunday, 27 degrees, and then there's those warm temperatures moving in. I mentioned Brittany, 30s for Monday and Tuesday with the risk of thunderstorms to the later part of Tuesday, 29 for Wednesday, and those temperatures continuing into later next week as well.
30 degrees just in time to go back to work.
Exactly. Always works that way.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Still ahead, a Saskatoon high school student is facing criminal charges after allegedly setting a fellow student on fire. That story when we return. Stay with us.
Of the country's vast natural resource wealth. Khulud Khair is a Sudan analyst based in Kenya. She says other African nations might be willing to send peacekeepers, but it will not happen quickly.
If there is a sufficient recognition of A, how bad things are right now, but B, how much worse they will get, then we could see as something of a shorter time frame of 1 or 2 years.
The UN report urges an expanded arms embargo, which now only applies to the Darfur region of Sudan. But Khair says getting countries to comply is problematic.
An arms embargo is very difficult to enforce, but if you are sanctioned by the UN, it does impact the extent to which you can bank on a political future.
Thus far, mediation led by Saudi Arabia has been fruitless, perhaps because both sides still appear to believe they can prevail militarily. Terrible rains and flooding have added to Sudan's misery, but not stopped the fighting, as civilian deaths mount from air attacks by Sudan's army and shelling from the Rapid Support Forces. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Europe's Climate Monitoring Service says summer 2024 was the hottest on record. Copernicus says that included the hottest June, the hottest August, and in mid-July, the hottest 4 days ever recorded. The data suggests the planet has met or surpassed 1.5 degrees of warming. That threshold was part of key global agreements to try to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. Copernicus also tracked the extreme fire season this summer. Fires in the Northwest Territories, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba pushed carbon emissions in August to their highest levels in more than 20 years. This is Your World Tonight. I'm Tom Harrington. You can hear Your World Tonight wherever you are. Just subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app or download the CBC News app. Just go to the local tab and press play wherever you are. Students in Jasper, Alberta did not go back to class this week. July's wildfire filled their school buildings with smoke, ash, and toxins that are still being cleaned out. From air quality to trauma support, education officials now have to plan for climate emergencies too. Janet French has that story.
This is such great news.
Megan LeBlanc is among parents who hoped her 2 kids could return to elementary school in Jasper this month.
Because the kids get to start in their school only a couple of weeks late, which is actually a miracle.
Fire crew's right there. 6 weeks ago, more than 20,000 people, residents and tourists, lined up on a highway to British Columbia, evacuating Jasper National Park to escape an encroaching wildfire. A wall of flames burned cabins and campgrounds and destroyed a third of the town site, including the LeBlanc's house. Jasper's 2 school buildings were spared. Staff were able to shut down the ventilation systems remotely, but smoke and toxins got inside through open windows.
We're talking about library books, front and back, inside each cover of every book in the school.
Grand Yellowhead Public Schools Superintendent Carolyn Lewis Shillington says 200 workers were on site, cleaning and repairing. Lewis Shillington is also placing mental health workers in Jasper and the nearby town of Hinton.
A Saskatoon high school student is facing a grave criminal charge and a shocking accusation. The charge, attempted murder. The accusation, setting a fellow student on fire. The CBC's Alexander Silberman has the story.
At a Saskatoon high school, a show of support for an injured classmate. A 14-year-old girl is now facing charges for attempted murder, aggravated assault, and arson after an alleged attack yesterday. Police say the girl seriously injured another classmate at Evan Hardy Collegiate by lighting her on fire. The victim, a 15-year-old girl, was taken to hospital with serious injuries after being treated for burns at the scene. A student who witnessed the assault and her mother spoke out about the assault today, and they say seeing such a violent incident at the school has left them shaken.
When her hair went on fire, then her body started to light on fire, and she started to scream, and I'm still shaking a little.
Yeah. It was just like unreal, right? I'm not sure how we're going to cope with it, but it's going to take a lot of time.
A teacher at the school was also injured in the incident and treated at the hospital after helping to extinguish the fire. The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation says it's making sure staff have the support they need as they process the violent incident.
Teachers care a lot about their students, and they're going to jump in and do everything they can to try and keep them safe. Ultimately, we should all be coming to schools in safe environments, and these incidents should be prevented.
The victim's family members were visibly emotional, some in tears, as the accused appeared in Saskatoon Provincial Court this morning. The 14-year-old girl facing charges wept through her brief court proceeding and was remanded into custody before her next hearing on September 11th. At the high school, classes remained canceled on Friday. The school's principal announced that classes will remain canceled until Tuesday, giving students and staff time to come to terms with the act of violence. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The RCMP have arrested a Toronto area man in connection with a terror investigation in Quebec near the U.S. border. The Mounties have not yet publicly commented, but the U.S. Department of Justice says a 20-year-old Pakistani national living in Canada was arrested. A resident in the area told Radio Canada she saw police officers with a man in handcuffs on her front lawn and woman in cuffs on her porch.
They said that it was confidential and they couldn't tell me what was going on. I just saw, the SWAT team vans and the army and the guys all in camouflage with the M16s.
The DOJ says Mohammed Shahzad Khan was planning to cross illegally into the U.S. and attack Jewish people. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland says Khan was allegedly planning a terrorist attack in New York on the anniversary of the Hamas assault on Israel on October 7th. And he planned to slaughter as many Jewish people as possible in the name of ISIS. Canadian police sources involved with the case confirmed to CBC News that an arrest happened Wednesday in Ormstown, about an hour outside of Montreal. They say 3 others were also detained. The 14-year-old accused in Wednesday's deadly school shooting in Georgia made his first court appearance today, and so did his father about an hour later.
This hearing is concluded, and you may escort this defendant out.
Colt Gray has been charged with 4 counts of murder. 2 students and 2 teachers were killed in the shooting at Appalachia High School earlier this week. Meanwhile, his father, 54-year-old Colin Gray, is facing 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. Prosecutors say the charges stem from Gray knowingly allowing his son to possess a weapon. It's getting harder to find a job in this country. Unemployment in Canada is up, according to the latest numbers from Statistics Canada. It rose to 6.6% in August, and the situation is particularly tough on university students and recent grads seeking work. Anis Sadari reports.
As Canadian students head back to school, a growing number are still trying to find work. Many without success, months into searching.
It's been tough applying for jobs, no responses, 1 interview out of many that come up. It just, and it doesn't end up working out. It's demeaning, it's demoralizing, hard on your mental health.
University career planners say it's not a surprise and that a bad job market is really bad for students and recent graduates.
In previous years, when the job market was a lot hotter, employers were more flexible to meet students halfway, give them additional flexibility. That's not the case right now.
The unemployment rate for people aged 15 to 24 was up to 14.5% in August, but it's up to 6.6% across all age groups. The Bank of Canada has been watching the job market slow down. Just this week, it signaled more interest rate cuts may come as a result. And economists agree, saying inflation is no longer the biggest concern.
The risk is that unemployment rate is too high and there is just too much slack in the labor market.
While overall job numbers were flat, gains were in part-time work, 66,000 of those jobs. But the economy lost 44,000 full-time positions.
The job market is still very challenging. There is not a lot of hiring going on. But make no mistakes, once rates fall further, employers are going to go out and hire. And I suspect that we won't see that happening until early 2025.
But for those who need work now, it's hard to wait.
I'm always available and always ready for the next interview.
Until then, applying for work is the full-time job. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
Canada announced new military support for Ukraine today, including 80,000 small surplus rockets and 1,300 warheads. It came at a regular conference of Ukraine's allies. And Canada weighed in on Ukraine's demand that Western weapons come without prohibitions against deploying them against Russian territory.
They are seeking permission to enable them to use long-range fires on Russian attacks on Russian air bases and military installations. And I wanted to also say that Canada supports Ukraine's request for permission.
Volodymyr Zelensky repeated the plea, saying such long-range attacks are needed to bring the Kremlin to the negotiating table. The idea has prompted worries of direct military confrontation between Russia and the West. U.S. comments today stressed Ukraine's defense, announcing $250 million in new weaponry. Well, it's been the hottest summer on record. Global weather monitors in Europe say this summer paints a frightening picture of how climate change has progressed. That story next.
Were firing toward a, quote, main instigator of violent activity, unquote. Mariam is an Italian activist with the International Solidarity Movement. She was at the protest. We've agreed to use an alias to protect her identity because she fears for her safety. We reached her on the road in the occupied West Bank.
Mariam, I know you spent much of the day outside a hospital dealing with the aftermath of what has happened to your colleague and friend. Can you describe what it was like there?
At the hospital, well, we arrived there with an ambulance. I was on the ambulance. They took her to the emergency room.
You were in the ambulance with Ayşenur?
Yes, I was in the ambulance with Ayşenur. They tried to resuscitate her, but she died not long after we reached the hospital.
I'm very sorry, Mariam. As much as you're comfortable sharing, can you describe what that was like for you to be in that ambulance?
It was a bit surreal. I think you don't quite realize the situation. Yeah, it was I don't know, just a bit shocking.
Yeah.
Surreal, not quite realizing what was going on.
Where were you? How far away were you from Ayşenur when she was shot?
We were a few meters apart. I was on the road, and she was slightly behind with another activist in the next to a tree, in the olive tree, but also close to the road. We were clearly visible to the army that was still on the hill. They were like 200 meters maybe away on top of us. There were soldiers in the street, and there was a sniper on the rooftop of a Palestinian home. Again, we were clearly visible. We were just standing, so we were not doing anything. There were Palestinians farther away, and it was a quiet, a calm moment, and we heard two shots of live ammunition. one of them hit a metal object and it bounced and injured a Palestinian man, and the other one was directed at Aysenur to her head. Well, no, it was intentionally shot to hit her in the head.
We should tell our listeners we are in the very early stages of this story. CBC News has not been able to do its own reporting on today's events. The Associated Press has spoken to another witness, Jonathan Pollock, an Israeli who was participating in the protest, who paints a similar picture to what you have just told us. 2 doctors confirmed that Aysenur was shot in the head. For its part, the United States has said that they confirm, the U.S. State Department confirms that Aysenur Ezgi was killed, but they did not say at this point, have not said at this point, whether she was shot by Israeli troops. For its part, the IDF says it is looking into reports that a foreign national would.
Global weather monitors in Europe say this summer has been the hottest on record. Their report is filled with data painting a frightening picture of just how far climate change has progressed. The CBC's Susan Ormiston has the story.
There was a question after 2023's record-breaking heat. Would this summer be similar or cool slightly? Well, according to data released this morning by Copernicus, the European Climate Monitoring Service, summer 2024 was even slightly hotter.
August 2024 was the warmest August on record, on par with August 2023. We are still at record level of global average temperature, and this has been the case for more than a year.
According to their data, we've met or surpassed 1.5 degrees of warming. That was the throttle on climate heat urged in the Paris talks nearly a decade ago to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. But now we've seen the hottest June, the hottest August, and in mid-July, the hottest 4 days ever recorded. Seas are staying warm, holding the heat last year, caused by continued high carbon emissions we're pushing into the atmosphere and by the weather pattern El Nino. Even as that ends, the data shows persistent warming. That trend is up.
It's a warning that urgent action is needed. It's also a sign that as the climate continues to warm, as we reach this global temperature record, we expect more frequent and more intense extreme climate events.
Copernicus also tracked the extreme fire season this summer. Fires in the Northwest Territories, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba pushed carbon emissions in August to their highest levels in over 20 years. From this animation of the data, you can see at the top of the map the intense smoke. It develops into dark red splotches, and that's from Canadian wildfires, the smoke crossing over the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. Copernicus now concludes it is looking more and more likely that 2024 will be the hottest year overall. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Toronto.
Riley Lachuk is back, and Riley, even though it was a crisp morning, as we've been putting it today, we are no stranger to that hot weather and these hot summers that Susan was just talking about.
It was among the more humid summers here in Winnipeg. Not in the top spot, but certainly it was a lot more humid than usual. It's a one-off kind of heat.
And it's September, but the heat's not over.
Yeah, but the bright evenings are.
Oh, no.
That segues me into the weather. So tonight we have an 8 p.m. sunset. This is our last 8 p.m. sunset of the year. Yeah, I know it's a little bit depressing, but it was going to happen sooner or later. 7:29 in 2 weeks is when our sunset is. And look at what happens in 3 weeks from now toward the end of September. 7:14 is our sunset. So the days are getting quite a bit shorter, and that's only going to continue till we get to December. Okay, your dog walking forecast. Let's brighten up the mood a little bit here. This is Rico. Thank you, Mary and Greg, for sending this picture of Rico in. Talkback at cbc.ca is where you can send your pictures anytime you like, and I will be eagerly awaiting them in the inbox. 10 degrees to start tomorrow morning. South winds at 10. Those pick up to 15, gusting 30 by the afternoon and 22 by the evening. Notice the nighttime icon at that 8 o'clock temperature now. The wind staying a little bit breezy through the evening. All right, your forecast now. For tonight across southern Manitoba, single digits for the most part once again, even down to 2 degrees in Fort Frances overnight tonight. So a bit of a chilly one across parts of northwestern Ontario and southern Manitoba, 10 in Dauphin overnight tonight. And into tomorrow, or into tonight in the north, we're looking at lows a little bit warmer of 9 degrees or so for Thompson, Lynn Lake, 11 in Churchill and Gillamore. We'll see a little bit more cloud as we get through the overnight period tonight. That cloud still hanging around into the morning hours, does start to push out as we get through into the noon hour. 16 sunshine by noon in Churchill tomorrow, 20s through Flin Flon, the Pas up to 24 degrees in the afternoon tomorrow as we start to see that high pressure ridge starting to shift a little bit further to the east. We'll see temperatures like that into southwestern Manitoba as we get through into the day tomorrow as well. So starting with single digits again through parts of Westman, but look at what happens by the time we get into the afternoon hours here. 28 in Verdun and Dauphin, 29 in Swan River, 23 in Winnipeg, and only 18 in Dryden. So you can really see as that progression of that high pressure ridge makes its way from west to east across the province throughout the day. Tomorrow, quick look at your Sunday temperatures here into the 30s for Swan River, 32 degrees for your Sunday, 31s through the west, 30 in Winnipeg, Brittany. Temperatures like these continue into next week as well, as I mentioned, and I'll have that in your 7-day forecast, plus some weather picks coming up a little bit later on.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Police Chief Danny Smythe has retired, and the search for a new top cop is on. Coming up, we talk to a group formed specifically to hold police accountable for their actions and what they want to see in a new chief. Stay with us.
Power and this magic to tell you exactly what you need to push you to that next level, especially at the level you're competing at, obviously. I don't want you to give away all her secrets and your secrets, but what can you share, what she says or does to get you to where you are?
She knows me almost as well as I know myself, of course. Our relationship is just built on trust and communication. She just sees how I'm currently am in the moment, and she just knows what to say, basically. I don't know, it's almost like magic sometimes.
Yeah. If we go back to a few weeks before the games started, you talked about your performance at the last Paralympics, and you said, you're going to try to make the podium this time. We'll see what happens. Now, as we speak, you're a 2-time Paralympic gold medalist. You broke records. Have you had a chance to process it all yet?
Of course. I think on the podium it fully hit, and people have seen the videos. I started bawling. It was just a lot of raw emotion. It just hit like a truck, basically. I think going from I think my highest ranked event was I was 5th to 1st in the world in just 3 years. It was, I would say, it was just amazing. The growth I've had under my sister's control is just extraordinary.
What did she say to you when you won?
Not a lot of words, just a lot of tears and hugging at that point. We were both trying to find some stability in that moment.
Sure. No, and sometimes you really don't need words, right? Those tears and those hugs are all you need. And I have to say, in the conversations, the interviews I've heard and seen you do, and obviously on the podium and what you're saying now, I think it's really powerful when people wear their emotions on their sleeves, especially when they're in a position of prominence, as you are, and have the world's eyes on them. I know when you were speaking to my colleague Heather Hiscox on CBC News Network, you were apologizing when you got emotional, but I think there's so much power in that.
Of course. I find that I wear my heart on my sleeve a lot, and I say at this level, under so much stress, I find that I bottle it up quite a lot until, well, I break, or I not break, but touch the wall and it just floods out, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not afraid to show my emotion in front of the world. My dad really taught me how it was okay to show that kind of emotion in front of people.
You compete, Nicholas, in the S14 category. For listeners who don't know a lot about what these classification numbers mean, what do you want them to know about yours?
So the S14 classification encompasses autism and intellectual impairments, which would mean people would have a hard time with their reaction speed, power recognition.
As the city prepares to choose the next chief of police, we wonder what is needed to restore the relationship with communities that feel hurt by the police. Our series gives Winnipeggers from various walks of life a chance to weigh in. Today we hear from Abdi Ahmed, the co-chair of the Winnipeg Police Accountability Coalition. He starts with discussing what their relationship has been like with the outgoing chief.
It's been quite antagonistic. We've tried to build relationships. We've tried to work closely with the chief as a Police Accountability Coalition. We started to meet with the police. We wanted to start with an open page, like a clean slate, to make sure that we try to give him a benefit of doubt, to work with him closely. And we started to meet with him every quarter, like every 3 months. We organized a meeting with him, Police Accountability Coalition. And we will meet, we'll bring issues. And every time the issues that we brought kept on being pushed to the next meeting, And most of the things that we got out of the chief was defensiveness of all the things that we brought. I cannot remember one issue that we brought to these discussions that actually resulted in positive, outcomes in terms of what we wanted to do. So we decided at some point, there's no point in wasting time in meeting with this chief. So we wrote to the chief and copied the police board and said, we will no longer be meeting with you as the Police Accountability Coalition.
Well, your group, your community, really, communities, representative of communities in Winnipeg, decided it wasn't even worth meeting with the chief because you weren't getting any results.
Yeah. So we decided not to meet with the chief because we were not having any results. On the other side, we have had good relationships with the police board, and we worked closely. And even though there were not tangible results that were happening, at least we discussed issues that were moved forward. And
can you give me an example of something that was moved forward?
We had commitments in terms of engaging on the hiring of a new police chief, in terms of the input that we made, and Councillor Chambers, for example, even though I will not put it to be where we want it to be, it was quite responsive in terms of how we engaged together. With the Winnipeg Police Chief, we disengaged. We found him quite antagonistic. We found him quite difficult, defensive in terms of when it comes to community issues. And we just decided, I know that, folks talk about him creating a new position in the executive on community relations and all these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, in my opinion, those are window dressings. When we continue to see the same things with no change. We've had people of color lost in the hands of police officers. We haven't had any change. We've had a police officer who wades into controversial issues and calls, community leaders names, and we've always had these issues. Yeah.
I want to ask you about something specific before I move to the qualities that you're hoping for in a new chief. I want to ask you when of course we've had the incidents you're responding to, and I'm just thinking about. I mean, there's many. Unfortunately, I could identify many. In those moments, what is your hope that would happen? So if there's an incident and the community has lost someone, maybe even at the hands, maybe it's been a police-involved shooting, as we've had over the last year, moments of these, obviously. What's your hope of what would happen? Like, would the community be meeting with police right away? What would that communication look like that would speak to trust and real change, in your view?
I think a police chief who will come out to the community and provide a real rundown of what happened from all perspectives, not only the police perspective. What we had with Danny Smythe was always excusing what the police officers did and always coming up with a script and a narrative that represented things that what represented in the police view of the happenings in these kind of situations. He's never consulted with the community. We've never heard him presenting a holistic view of those kind of incidents and what resulted in the death of those people. We've had him get defensive, defend. We've never had him stand with the community. When you lose an innocent life in the community, you need a chief who can stand with the community. We need a chief who can balance, both sides. But we have a chief who has only presented one narrative and has sided with just the police force that he represents.
What are the key qualities should the next chief have that to you would maybe make community take the leap back to trusting and maybe to meeting with this person again?
I think the qualities of a new police chief in terms of who we will want as Police Accountability Coalition is someone who's responsive to the community, a consensus builder, a chief who understands the perspectives of the community as well as he understands the perspectives of the police officers that he leads. Someone who can balance the trust of the police officers that he leads against the trust of the community. A chief is the executive head of the police service, and a chief is the person who can bring culture change, systemic change.
Still ahead, Riley's back with the last check on our weekend forecast when we come back. Stay with us.
Sit there and do much of anything. And one day he was in town and we decided to go bowling. He came back into town every weekend. We went bowling and I saw this other kid a couple lanes down with his own bowling ball, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I asked for a bowling ball for Christmas, and he told me that the bowling balls are expensive, so if we're going to get a bowling ball for you for Christmas, you have to commit to bowling every week.
Yeah.
So we started this tradition of bowling every Saturday until I got picked up by a coach who got me into a youth league, and the rest is history. It just took off from there.
Yeah, you already hold the world record for most pins knocked down in 24 hours by a team of 2 as well. How does your dad feel about your retirement?
He supports it. He is one of the most amazing men I've ever met. Obviously, he very much enjoys bowling with me. He's going to miss it, but he realizes that for my health and for taking care of my son, it's the best move for me, and he fully supports that.
Yeah, he's still bowling though. He's going to keep going.
He is still bowling. Yeah. I am the only member that is wholeheartedly retiring.
And just to go back to the competition, this particular record in those 24 hours, did you make any adjustments to your technique as the time went on?
As the muscles get sore, you can't throw it quite as hard as you were at the beginning of the day. I did have my middle finger split open in around the 10th hour, and I had to start using my ring finger and my pinky finger instead because I could not get my middle finger in the bowling ball anymore.
Oh, well, that would mess up that would mess things up for most people.
That was a interesting hurdle to overcome. My dad had something related around the same time. He had multiple blisters come up on his thumb, but he's Superman, so he was able to push through it, and he kept going.
Do you have a coffee IV throughout this?
No, I drank a little bit of an energy drink. I took a few power naps.
Oh, you can take naps? You're allowed?
You're only one person's allowed to bowl at a time. You're only allowed to use one lane. So the way we had it set up, I would throw 15 balls, and then Eric would throw 15, and then Kyle would throw 15, and then Steve, my father, would throw 15.
Okay. Yeah,
and then it would be back to me. So while you're up there bowling, you bowl for about 5 minutes, and then you go sit for about 15 while the other guys bowl. During that 15 minutes, you can do whatever you need to do. You can eat, you can drink, go to the bathroom, take a power nap. It might only be 10 minutes, but it does help.
Trace, congratulations.
Thank you.
Trace Wiseman is a member of a Kentucky bowling team that broke the record for most strikes in 24 hours. He's in Louisville, Kentucky.
Just had to check the calendar. No, this is September, not August. Hot temperatures as we get into the weekend, into next week. A 30 on Monday, mainly sunny sky. Normal high for this time of the year is 20, and that hot weather continues into next week. Risk of thunderstorms on Tuesday. Wednesday, 29 degrees, 30 degrees on Thursday. Slim chance we could see some showers by the end of next week, but temperatures considerably above seasonal for this time of the year. Okay, a couple of weather photos to show you. Tim shot these. Unfortunately, didn't see in the email where you took these, but regardless, they are very nice. This couple of harvest pictures for you here. To wrap up the week, you can always send your pics to me at talkback@cbc.ca. Okay, we're shifting gears now to an event for cats and the love that humans have for them. Meow Mania is a cat-themed market and adoption fair. It's taking place on Sunday here in Winnipeg at the Deer Lodge Community Club.
There will also be some local celebrity cats or celebrikitties who will be there for a meet and greet. Shanalee Vidal had the chance to meet the famous felines as they gathered for a photo shoot. Here's tonight's Daily Lift.
Hi, how's it going? Such a pretty girl. There we go. Who's the star? I'm a cat photographer. I love photographing cats, but I photograph mostly dogs. So it was really exciting for me to be able to put on this event because I am truly a cat person at heart. What's this? Good job, Grace. Meow Mania is a market for cat people. Cat people and cats. It's also an adoption fair, and then we also have some local feline celebrity guests as well.
Oh, look at you.
Standing up nice and tall.
So nice. It's neat when we go places and people are like, oh, is that Gracie? There you go. So Gracie is very, very sweet. Just loves to be loved, but she is still a tortie. So she does have sass when she wants to. And she got loads of gifts from Spain, Amsterdam. Like, I'm still blown away by it. The fact that people are just so generous and just love her and they have never met her. Just because she is not able to do things the same way as other cats. She still just loves life like any other cat does. And I'm just glad she's a part of my family.
Hello. Okay, we're gonna photograph Ronan just over here.
Ronan, the wobbly kitty. He is an 8-year-old cat with cerebellar hypoplasia, just like Gracie. When he was like maybe 2 years old, we had a local school. The whole class made birthday cards for him and they sent it over. Ronan, he's obviously relaxed. He's very friendly and anybody could just pick him up and he just wouldn't care. To me, like he's perfect in my eyes. And he's like my best friend and very calm, and he's my other half, besides my husband.
Time for your photo shoot.
I'm gonna take your picture.
Littlefoot he's sweet and spicy. He is a part Maine Coon, a cat that we actually found in a ditch when he was 2 weeks old. A lot of his fans love that he was rescued so little, that he was given a chance. His reels just started to pick up and started to get a lot of views, and now he's got 34,000 followers. We say he's gone from ditches to riches.
Is he growling?
Yeah, he growls, he barks sometimes, he is quite vocal. He likes to be admired, not so much handled, I would say.
A true diva.
Oh yeah, exactly. Definitely a diva.
The cat has more followers on Instagram than I do.
People love cats. All right, well, if you want to go to that market, the adoption fair, this Sunday at Deer Lodge Community Club.
Sounds like it's going to be a fun time.
Go check out the cats.
It's a great weekend event.
We'll see you back here Monday. Have a wonderful
Great
weekend.
weekend.